The first thing I heard was my mother screaming over the phone. "There's smoke everywhere. Don't yell at me. Just come." In the background, I could hear fireworks popping and something crackling that absolutely should not have been crackling inside my office. My name is Harper Ellison, and I was 31 years old when my parents burned down the one place I thought they couldn't touch. I wasn't married. I didn't have kids. What I had was that office, my glass-walled, downtown space that I'd built from nothing after years of being the practical daughter everyone leaned on. I ran a small but fast-growing consulting firm. It was quiet, controlled.
Mine.
At least I thought it was. That morning was July 4th. I was at home in sweatpants, reviewing contracts, ignoring group texts about barbecue plans. I'd already told my family no, again. I had deadlines. Clients flying in the next week. My office wasn't a party venue. Apparently, that was adorable of me. When my phone rang, I expected a voicemail. Instead, my mother's name flashed, followed by chaos, voices, laughter, coughing, someone yelling that the burgers were still frozen. "Why are you in my office?" I asked, already standing. She didn't answer that. She just cried. "We only borrowed it for the day. Your father said it would be fine." Borrowed. My office. With 25 relatives. As I grabbed my keys, fragments spilled through the line. My uncle bringing fireworks inside because it was too windy, my cousin plugging in extra hot plates, my aunt lighting sparklers near paper decorations they'd taped to my walls. I remember saying, very calmly, "Get everyone out. Now." Then my mom whispered, "Harper, the door won't open." That's when I heard it. Not fireworks. Fire. By the time I reached the street, sirens were already screaming toward my building. Smoke crawled out of the upper windows like a living thing. Neighbors stood filming. Someone pointed up and said, "Looks like an office party gone wrong." I stood there frozen, watching firefighters force their way inside the space I'd protected from everyone for years. And as the flames climbed higher, one thought landed, cold and clear in my chest. They didn't just cross a boundary. They erased it. I didn't know it yet, but this was the moment everything in my family was about to burn too. By the time the fire was out, my office no longer looked like a workplace, it looked like an accusation. Soot streaked the glass walls. Desks were warped. The reception couch I'd saved 6 months to buy was soaked and sagging like a defeated animal. Firefighters moved with professional calm, stepping over melted extension cords and half-burned paper flags my aunt had taped everywhere for vibes. My parents stood outside, wrapped in borrowed blankets, looking more inconvenienced than ashamed. My father kept saying it was an accident, like repetition could turn negligence into fate. An officer asked me if I was the owner. When I said yes, his eyebrows lifted slightly. "You weren't present?" "No," I said. "I didn't know they were here." That sentence followed me the rest of the night. 25 relatives slowly drifted away, some hugging me, some avoiding eye contact, one cousin asking, unbelievably, if the insurance would cover his drone that melted near the window. My mother cried loudly, theatrically, making sure everyone saw her tears. At the hospital, because smoke inhalation apparently, I sat between my parents while a nurse checked their vitals. My mother squeezed my hand. "We just wanted one nice family day. You're always so busy."
Busy.
As if success were a personality flaw. This wasn't new. I'd paid my parents' credit cards twice. I'd helped my younger brother get back on his feet 4 times. Every holiday, my time, space, or money became communal property because I was the one who could handle it. But this time, they hadn't asked. They'd used my emergency keys, the ones I gave my mother years ago, just in case, and decided my office was the perfect place to host a patriotic family spectacle. When I asked why they didn't use their own house, my father shrugged. "Parking's better downtown. And your office is impressive. Impressive enough to risk." 2 days later, the fire marshal's report arrived. Electrical overload. Open flame. Negligence. My insurance adjuster followed with a colder word. Liability. "Your policy doesn't cover unauthorized events," she said carefully. "Especially commercial spaces used for private gatherings." I laughed once, short and sharp. So, what does it cover? She paused. Not this. That night, I sat alone in my apartment, the smell of smoke still trapped in my hair, staring at an email titled Notice of Temporary Closure, my client CC'd. My phone buzzed. A family group text lit up with messages about rescheduling July 4th dinner. And then my father sent one final line that made my hands go still. We'll need you to handle the damages. It's only fair. You're the owner. That was the moment I stopped feeling heard and started feeling clear. Clarity is a strange thing. It doesn't arrive loud or dramatic. It settles in quietly, like dust after an explosion, letting you finally see what's broken. The morning after my father's message, I didn't reply. I went to the office instead. Or what was left of it. The building manager unlocked the door with a look that said he already knew I was about to have a bad day. Inside, the air still smelled faintly of smoke and chemicals. Yellow tape cordoned off half the space. My assistant, Maya, stood near the window holding a clipboard like a shield. I told them not to let anyone else in, she said softly. But your aunt showed up last night asking if she could grab the cooler she left. That word, left, hit harder than it should have. I walked through the damage slowly. The conference table where I'd closed my first six-figure contract was scorched. My framed certifications were ash. A client prototype, non-replaceable, was ruined beyond repair. Then I saw it. On my desk, beneath soot and water stains, sat my father's watch. He must have taken it off while grilling indoors. The band was cracked, the face clouded, but it was unmistakably his. Proof. Not of the fire, but of presence. Of entitlement. I took a photo. When I sent the image to the family group chat with a simple, "Why was Dad's watch on my desk?" the responses came fast. My brother, relax. It's just a watch. My aunt, we were cleaning up. My mother, why are you trying to make this worse?
No one said sorry.
That afternoon, a client called to postpone indefinitely. Another asked for reassurance I couldn't give. My calendar emptied itself with quiet, devastating efficiency. At dinner that night, my parents showed up at my apartment unannounced, carrying leftovers like peace offerings. My father sat at my kitchen table and said, "You're letting stress get to you. Families help each other." I looked at him. "You burn my livelihood." He waved it off. "Insurance will sort it out." "It won't," I said. "I told you that." Silence. Then my mother sighed, long and heavy. "Harper, don't be dramatic. You'll recover. You always do." That was it. Not concern. Not accountability. Just expectation. They stood to leave, my father adding, "Let us know how much you need. We'll talk about it. We'll talk about it," as if they had any say. After they left, I sat on the floor, back against the couch, heart pounding not with grief, but with something sharper. This wasn't a misunderstanding. It was a pattern. And patterns don't stop unless something interrupts them. I opened my laptop, pulled up the fire report, the insurance denial, the building's security access logs, and for the first time, I didn't ask what went wrong. I asked what leverage I had. Because if my family thought this would end with me quietly fixing their mess again, they had no idea who they'd just taught to stop forgiving. The email hit my inbox at 9:17 a.m., and for a full 10 seconds, I thought it was spam. Subject: Incident Review. Downtown Commercial Fire. It was from the property owner's legal team. By 9:24, my phone started ringing. Apparently, my parents hadn't just turned my office into a family cookout. They told the building manager, several tenants, and the fire department that I had approved the event. That it was a company-hosted July 4th celebration. That I was running late. I stared at the words on the screen, my pulse roaring in my ears. They lied. And not privately. At 11 a.m., there was a mandatory building meeting. Tenants, management, legal. I showed up in a blazer that still smelled faintly of smoke, notebook in hand, jaw set. My parents were already there.
Sitting.
Comfortable. My mother waved when she saw me. The property lawyer began calmly, professionally. We're here to determine responsibility for the unauthorized event that resulted in significant damage. Then my father stood. He cleared his throat and said, "This was my daughter's gathering. We were guests. She wanted to host something for her team and invited family." The room went quiet. Every head turned toward me. I felt heat crawl up my neck. Not embarrassment, not fear. Betrayal, sharp and total. My mother nodded beside him, adding softly, "She's been under a lot of pressure lately." Pressure. I stood slowly. "No," I said. My voice didn't shake. That surprised me. "That's not true." The lawyer looked between us. "Ms. Ellison, did you authorize the event?" I pulled out my phone, connected it to the screen at the front of the room, and opened the access log. Time-stamped entries. My mother's emergency key. My father's repeated badge attempts. Then I opened the group text thread. Read it aloud. "I already told everyone Harper said no. She won't mind once we're set up. She always comes around." Murmurs rippled through the room. I finished by displaying the photo of my father's watch, burned, sitting on my desk. "I wasn't there," I said. "They were." My father's face went pale. My mother started crying instantly, real tears this time. But it didn't matter. The lawyer cleared his throat. "Thank you. That clarifies responsibility." After the meeting, in the hallway, my mother grabbed my arm hard enough to hurt. "How could you do that to us in public?" I looked at her hand on my sleeve. "You did it to me first." My father hissed, "You just ruined us." I didn't respond, because as I watched them walk away, angry, exposed, finally seen, I realized something chilling and undeniable. They hadn't panicked because of the fire. They panicked because the story was no longer theirs to control. And that was when I understood this wasn't over. This was only the moment the truth started spreading. The quiet after betrayal is louder than the explosion itself. For 2 days after the meeting, I didn't answer calls. Not from my parents. Not from relatives. Not from the cousin who suddenly remembered my birthday. I let the silence stretch, not as punishment, but as space. Space to feel everything without being told how to feel. I sat in my apartment with documents spread across the table like a crime scene. The fire marshal's report, the access logs, the insurance denial, the building's liability notice. In black and white, it all pointed one direction. At night, the anger softened into something colder. Resolve. This wasn't about revenge in the dramatic sense. I didn't want them humiliated for sport. I wanted something cleaner. Something proportional. Something that would finally reset the power they'd been borrowing from me for years. I called an attorney, recommended quietly by the property owner's legal team. Her name was Elena. She didn't gasp or sigh when I explained. She just listened. When I finished, she said, "They exposed you to professional and financial liability by misrepresenting authority. That's serious." I swallowed. "I don't want to destroy them." Elena paused. "Then don't. But you can stop protecting them." That sentence stayed with me. Next, I met with my accountant. We reviewed every transfer I'd ever made to my parents. Every loan. Every emergency I'd quietly covered. I hadn't realized how much leverage I'd handed over disguised as kindness. By the end of the meeting, my hands were steady. I wasn't going to scream. I wasn't going to threaten. I was going to step back and let the truth do the work. The plan formed slowly, deliberately. First, formal documentation. I would separate myself legally from any implied responsibility for my parents' actions, past and future. Second, transparency. Not gossip, not drama, just facts, delivered where they mattered most. Third, and this was the hardest, I would stop cushioning the consequences. No more stepping in to smooth things over. No more paying to keep peace. Because peace built on silence isn't peace. It's permission. On the third night, my mother finally left a voicemail instead of calling. Her voice was small. "Your father hasn't slept. People are talking. We didn't raise you to be like this." I listened to it once, then again, and finally I deleted it. I wasn't becoming someone new. I was becoming someone they could no longer use. And tomorrow, I would take the first step, quietly, officially. That would make sure they never mistook my success for communal property again. The first move didn't feel like revenge. It felt like paperwork. At 8:06 a.m., I signed a formal affidavit clarifying that my parents had no authorization, verbal or written, to access or use my commercial property. Elena filed it the same morning, attaching the access logs, fire report, and the meeting transcript. No accusations, just documentation. By noon, the building owner's insurer had acknowledged receipt. By 3 p.m., my phone started buzzing. My father called first. I didn't answer. Then my brother texted, "Why are lawyers involved? Dad says you're escalating." I kept working. At 4:45, Elena forwarded me an email thread. The property owner had officially reassigned liability for damages. Not to me. To the people who claimed they hosted the event. My parents. That evening, I went back to the office one last time before repairs began. The space was empty, echoing, stripped down to concrete and silence. I stood where my desk used to be and felt something unexpected, relief. At 7:12 p.m., my mother showed up at my apartment. She looked smaller, tired. No leftovers this time. "You filed something," she said, voice shaking. "The building called us. They said we're responsible." "Yes," I replied. She stared at me like I'd spoken another language. "You can't do this to family." I met her gaze. "You already did this." I just stopped absorbing it.
She cried. Real sobs.
Said they'd have to refinance. Said my father's name was already being whispered in places it shouldn't be. Said relatives were asking questions. I didn't interrupt. When she finished, I said, "I'm not suing you. I'm not attacking you. I'm just not lying for you anymore." She whispered, "You're letting us fall." "No," I said gently. "I'm letting go." The next step happened without my presence. Elena sent formal notices to my parents and my brother, revoking any implied financial support or authority to act on my behalf.
Clean.
Legal. Final. By the end of the week, my father called again. This time, his voice wasn't angry. It was afraid. "Harper," he said quietly, "we didn't think it would go this far." I closed my eyes. "Neither did I when I kept saving you." "I did," I said. "That's why I stopped." When the call ended, I sat in the dark, heart racing, not from fear, but from adrenaline, from control returning to my hands inch by inch. The fire had taken my office, but what I was burning now was something far more dangerous to them. The illusion that I'd always clean up after their mess. The fallout didn't explode all at once. It fractured. Slowly. Unevenly. In places I couldn't have predicted. My father stopped calling after that night. Instead, messages started coming through other people. My aunt asking if I'd calm down. My cousin warning me that Dad was taking this hard. My brother accusing me of choosing money over blood. I answered none of them. Because for the first time, I could see the shape of the panic clearly. It wasn't about hurt feelings. It was about consequences finally landing where they belonged. 2 weeks later, the building repairs began. I worked temporarily from a shared space across town. Clients returned, cautious, but reassured once they saw the official clarification. The rumor that I'd hosted a reckless office party quietly died. The truth didn't need drama. It just needed time. My parents' truth moved faster. My father's name circulated among the property owners' network. Not as a villain, but as a risk. Someone who blurred lines. Someone who assumed permission where there was none. One afternoon, my mother showed up again. She didn't knock this time. She rang once and waited. Her voice was flat, controlled. "Your father wants to talk." I shook my head. "I'm not meeting as a group."
He's not angry, she said.
"He's different." Against my better judgment, I agreed to meet him the next day at a quiet cafe near their house. Neutral ground. No witnesses who mattered. He looked older. Smaller somehow. His hands shook when he lifted his coffee. "I never meant to hurt you," he said. I thought you'd handle it." There it was. The sentence that explained everything. I leaned forward. "That's the problem. You never thought about whether I should." He swallowed. We're under review. Financially. Socially. People don't trust us the same way. I didn't smile. I didn't soften. I know. Silence stretched between us. Finally, he asked, "Is there any way to fix this?" I took a breath. Not for him, for me. "Yes," I said. "You live with it. You stop using me as insurance. And you don't ever step into my life without permission again." He nodded slowly, like the weight of it was finally sinking in. When I stood to leave, he said, "You're not who we raised." I paused, then replied quietly, "No. I'm who I became after you stopped protecting me." As I walked out, my phone buzzed with a notification. Repairs approved. Business reopening date confirmed. I didn't look back. Because closure doesn't come from forgiveness. It comes from balance finally being restored.